tonight. Several wildfires in western Saskatchewan forced people out of 2 communities.
It's pretty bizarre because the lake was all ice on one side, and then you could see all of a sudden a big forest fire taking off.
Also, the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation says a surge in immigration is driving up the need for language specialists in schools. Plus, you may be able to sip your favorite boozy beverage in your nearest city park this summer.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, May 4th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thanks for watching. Wildfires are burning dangerously close to 2 communities in northwestern Saskatchewan. Residents of the village of Loche are on alert, and an evacuation order has already been issued for their neighbours in Clearwater River Dene Nation. Bonnie Allen has the latest on what's become a fluid situation.
When the evacuation order was issued, Paul Haynes packed up his kids and belongings and drove more than 300 kilometers south to Meadow Lake.
There's our stuff. There's our camping gear.
Oh! Leaving Clearwater River Dene Nation wasn't easy for the teacher and his family.
We had tried to leave at one point, but we got turned around because we were kind of not trapped, I guess, but just the fire across the road. It was too intense, so we couldn't go south. And then yesterday evening around 8 o'clock, we got through.
Several wildfires are threatening the northern village of Loche and the nearby Clearwater River Dene Nation. Together, the 2 communities are home to about 3,500 people. The First Nation issued an evacuation order late Wednesday because there's only one road into the community.
We were advised that, if the winds changed and the fire kept going, that it could block our only access to and from the reserve. So we had some people taken out. Some people are refusing, and some people are with us here fighting the fire.
Thursday, the community issued another plea to get out. The band councillor says they're working with the province to fight the fire from the air and the ground.
There's a number of heavy equipment that are creating fire guards, essentially. So those are the lines behind here that you see.
So we actually stopped and got some extra hoses.
Marcia Morgan was driving home to the First Nation when she received word she couldn't return.
That kind of led to a number of frantic phone calls to try and figure out what was going on. We have 3 dogs that are still up there.
She's surprised by this evacuation so early in May.
And so that makes us a little bit nervous about what the rest of the year is going to look like, the rest of the summer.
My hat's off to all the guys and girls up there that are working this fire, because it was pretty intense from, what I could see driving through it.
They're worried about the dry forest, shifting winds, and the safety of their community. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Meadow Lake.
The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation says it needs money for English as an additional language specialists in schools. The increased need comes from a surge in immigration, and it's driving school enrollment numbers up. Loche has the story.
Squared plus x subtract 2.
Saskatchewan's premier says more cash for classrooms is on the way, but the STF says the province needs to zero in on the need for EAL staff. That includes money for teachers to get EAL training.
We want teachers to receive professional development on a regular basis, but again, because of underfunding, there's just not the resources there from the division.
One of the questions I ask teachers actually is, do you feel prepared to work with EAL learners in schools? And overwhelmingly, the response is, no, we don't feel prepared, and this is why we're taking these courses.
Ministry of Education data shows from the 2017-18 to 2021-22 school years, there was a 13.5% reduction in EAL teachers. The STF wants this cut reversed.
We have over 10% of our students who are EAL learners now and growing. And so if you can consider that in some of our classrooms, you have 5 or 6 or 7 students who are EAL learners, and they may all be from different countries. And classroom teachers are expected to meet the needs of all of the students. And for that, they need the help of EAL teacher specialists.
The Minister of Education says EAL needs will be discussed with school divisions in the coming weeks.
The wave that we're seeing in immigration, it's not just September 30th and all the students are in their classrooms. And so, does that cause some difficulty in school divisions kind of juggling their budgets when it comes to designating EAL and hiring EAL teachers? Because students are arriving in December and January and February and may have those needs.
According to the province, as of May 1st, there are more than 16,000 immigration students in Saskatchewan's 27 school divisions. And we're told that about 40% of the students who've immigrated to Canada this year do not speak English. Laura Sharpaletti, CBC News, Regina.
This summer, you may be able to sip your favorite alcoholic beverage in your nearest city park. The Saskatchewan government passed an amendment to liquor laws which allows municipalities to permit drinking in parks. It will be up to cities and towns to decide if they want to allow it. The bill received support from government and opposition MLAs. It received royal assent last week. Other Canadian cities have made similar changes in recent years. The minister responsible says some Saskatchewan cities are planning bylaw changes.
The intent is to let them have the decision. So if they don't want this to happen, they don't have to enforce it, or they don't have to put it into play. But the municipalities that have asked for it are really excited to be able to move forward. And I would highlight probably Saskatoon was the biggest push for this when this all started.
The opposition's critic for liquor and gaming says people have asked him about permitting cannabis consumption in parks as well, but the minister says that's not being considered by the government. An expert on homelessness says solutions won't work unless policymakers consult with people who have experienced it themselves. And that was exactly what was going on in Prince Albert earlier today. Aishwarya Duda has the details.
A research team is traveling across Canada to get a clearer picture on homelessness in our cities, how many people are unhoused, and details on who they are. Today, researchers are in Prince Albert speaking with community members and discussing their insights.
They talked about having to sleep in the bins to provide at least something over their head, and took us on tours of the bins and said, this is how, I say, how do you know what bin to sleep in? So they took us on tours and said, okay, here's one that's a donation bin. There might be clothing, there might be things warm in there. There might be some broken glass from throwing things in there. There might be some broken furniture. You got to be careful.
The team conducted interviews with more than 400 homeless people across 28 communities in the country. And lead researcher Cheryl Forchuk says 80% of them have a mental health diagnosis, including substance abuse disorder.
We found more young people that were homeless than we've seen previously, including people with more neurodiversity, kids with autism. For example, developmental handicaps, that the homeless sector is really not prepared to offer appropriate services.
Indigenous people are also overrepresented. In urban centers, about 30% people without a home are from Indigenous backgrounds, and Forchuk says the true number is likely much higher. That's because the current counting system focuses on large urban centers, leaving smaller rural communities out of the picture.
When we look at our smaller communities, the more rural communities, we're finding about 84% of the homeless population in those communities were Indigenous.
The researchers are calling for strategies to deal with issues like poverty by increasing basic income. They also want more public housing and rental supplements, and personalized support based on diverse needs for everyone, including young people, adults with dementia, veterans, and Indigenous people. Aishwarya Duda, CBC News, Prince Albert.
The Canada Revenue Agency strike is over. A tentative deal was announced overnight. Workers returned to the job today. The wage terms largely reflect those agreed in Monday's Public Service Alliance of Canada deal, centering on a 12.6% wage increase over 4 years. Union officials also say a process is being set up to address employee concerns around accessibility to telework. The union had been without an agreement since 2021. An Ontario man has spent weeks struggling to get money owed from the federal government. To do it, he had to convince officials of one critical fact, that he was still alive. Elise Skura has the story.
Last month, Michael Zakshevsky learned he was dead and had been since December.
Who made me that? Based on what? I asked them, do you have my death certificate in front of you? They said, no, we don't know, sir. We don't know, sir. We have to pass it to processing center, sir.
He and his wife, Stefania, thought the letter they received must be a scam. It came from Service Canada, who confirmed they sent him this.
The information we have on his file shows that Michael Joseph Zakrzewski passed away on December 15. Please accept our sympathy on your loss.
The Zakrzewskis were also told to repay old age security benefits totaling more than $3,500. When they checked their bank accounts, Michael realized his pension had stopped, and his wife's benefits came up $500 short.
I was scared to death because I feel responsible for the house, and I'm scared to death.
And to be honest, I didn't sleep well from that time. I'm waking up with some nightmares during the night. And we came to Canada and to be safe and protect, and I feel not safe anymore.
Employment and Social Development Canada says this all started with a letter from Poland. But when Michael called the Polish government, an official denied sending any letter. There was also no death certificate. But apparently, Canada doesn't need one. When a citizen dies overseas, Canada will accept either a foreign death certificate or a document from a foreign government showing the date of death. CBC confirmed with the department that Michael was resurrected on their accounts, and a few days later, he and his wife received all the money they're owed. But as for the question as to why this letter was sent in the first place, that remains unanswered. Elise Skura, CBC News, Ottawa.
2 days ahead of the coronation, King Charles welcomed Indigenous leaders from Canada, the Assembly of First Nations Chief and Métis and Inuit national leaders. Renee Filipponi has more from London.
It was a historic moment as the King welcomed Indigenous leaders to Buckingham Palace. There was no apology, no decree, but the leaders say it was the start of a conversation.
One of my elders who said that relationships are built over 100 cups of tea, and today we had our first cup of tea to build that relationship.
First Nations, Métis, and Inuit leaders were clear about what they wanted the King to know.
Well, we talked mostly about treaty and our treaty relationship with the Crown, that these treaties predate Canada as a country. And that relationship is one that we have to evolve.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women, residential schools, and the repatriation of cultural artifacts were also on the agenda. All three leaders will be in Westminster Abbey for the coronation.
We belong here. We belong at the coronation. We belonged at the funeral ceremony for the Queen because of that long historic relationship.
We must listen to the truth of the lived experiences of Indigenous peoples.
On his trip to Canada last year, King Charles said he and Camilla left with heavy hearts. Today was still about listening.
So I think he has a baseline understanding of the negative effects of colonization on First Nations, Inuit and Métis in Canada. What we do about that, I think, is a new conversation, and how he, in his role as king, could use his influence to work with us on reconciliation efforts.
This Indigenous scholar points out talk is not action.
Unfortunately, the Crown has not listened in the past, so I don't have a lot of optimism that this Crown or this king will listen. At the same time, this king has shown more interest than his mother.
Outside the palace, the decorated mall is a draw for many visiting for the coronation. The Grand Chief of Manitoba, Kiwetinawi Okimakinak, is one of them.
I think that I'm here because of my ancestors.
For him, this represents past wrongs. He's here hoping for a better future.
I'm here because of the faith that they had in the treaties, and that they believed that these treaties would be respected, and they were not. But I'm here to represent them, and I hope that those treaties are recognized at this stage.
Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
The crowning of Charles and his wife Camilla, who will become Queen, takes place at Westminster Abbey on Saturday. Adrian Arsenault will host coverage starting at 2 a.m. local time. You can watch it on CBC TV and News Network, CBC Gem, and CBC News Explore.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. Friend and Family F-150 event is on now.
A beautiful day out there today. Our weather specialist Ethan Williams joins me now from Wascana Park. But Ethan, before we talk about the weather, we have a wildfire update.
Yeah, that's right, Sam. We have an update now from Loche, and this announcement just coming in. I'm just going to read the information that we have in. Georgina Jolibois, of course, the mayor of Loche, now making an announcement on radio in that community that Loche is declaring a state of emergency because of the fire in the area. All residents are being asked to leave the area, and you must register before you go. Residents will be traveling by bus and I'm being told right now that the last bus will be leaving the community around 6:30, so that is very shortly here in the next 15 minutes. If you need assistance leaving, there is also a phone number to call, and that number is 306-240-0052, 306-240-0052, the number to call if you need help leaving Loche. But again, Georgina Jolibois, mayor of Loche, declaring a state of emergency for the community. You must evacuate as that fire is encroaching very close on the community there now. Now, of course, the fire's all sparked by this very, very warm weather that we've been having, and this stretch is now breaking some records. Let's take a look at where some of those records have been. This is from yesterday, and Stony Rapids, you absolutely shattered your record from yesterday by over 7 degrees. Uranium City, you're also looking at a similar amount there. Key Lake, that's a record from back in 1977. Collins Bay and Waskesiu joining in on records as well. And actually, Stony Rapids, our hotspot today, 30 degrees, one of the first communities in the province to get there. But it was also close to 30 in South and Central, and in fact still is right now with temperatures into the mid to upper 20s, especially on that western side of the province. With wildfires, of course, they are happening because we are having these conditions that are aggravating these fires. We're seeing some strong wind gusts, some temperatures close to 30 degrees. Relative humidity is also very low. But we go from fires into flooding. The WSA, Water Security Agency, giving an update saying the Qu'Appelle River system was more impacted by last month's snowstorm than they thought, specifically in the Moose Jaw River and Wascana Creek areas. And areas most affected will include Crooked and Round Lakes, where you're going to see peaks next week a bit higher than they were last year, about a 1 in 10 year peak event in that community there. And Pasqua Echo Lake, your peak is happening right about now. Last Mountain Lake, you will see similar high peaks come next week. The Water Security Agency warning of potentially some agricultural flooding in the area, and if you have waterfront property, it will likely become more so in the next week or so as that water encroaches. But on our systems map, again, not much helping the fires here. We're looking at just very clear conditions overnight tonight and through tomorrow as well. You can see those lines close together there. That indicates that really warm air still going to be with us. Best chance for rain comes early Saturday morning and through the day Saturday, but that'll only be in the south of the province. And at this point, that is only really a slim chance. In terms of wind gusts, they're really not going to be helping our forest fire situation tomorrow, averaging out around 50 kilometers an hour. And as we head into Saturday, probably a similar situation there as well. So these next couple of days, not going to be helpful in terms of that. Our extended forecast in Regina shows that we'll be cooling down a little bit as we head through this next week here, but temperatures will still be seasonal. We'll be looking again, possibly for some rain Saturday, Sunday, before we do get some breaks of sun here and there. In Saskatoon, same thing. We're looking for a bit of a cool down. Tomorrow will be around 20 degrees and seeing those kind of mid to upper teen conditions over this next while. Sunshine as well. Again, breezy these next few days, but overnight lows, Sam, will be quite warm. So will be nice to come out, especially here tonight in Wascana Park for a quick stroll.
All right. Thanks, Ethan. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to CBC Saskatchewan's YouTube channel. Ethan will be back with more local news and weather updates at 11 tonight. We're back on the network tomorrow at 6. Thanks for watching and have a great night.